The best possible thing may have just happened for Helldivers 2, and it couldn't have come at a better time. Pilestedt, by the way, I am so sorry if I butcher that name throughout this video. I promise I tried hard to find out how to pronounce it properly. Please don't kill me. Wait, where was I? Oh yes, Pilestedt has officially stepped down from his CEO position and will now be taking over as Chief Creative Officer of Arrowhead Game Studios. At face value, it's like, oh, this guy just lost his CEO job, but no, that's not it at all. My name is Easy. I hope you're doing fantastic. Let's talk about this news and why it's genuinely very, very good for this game. Starting with some quick background, as we know, Helldivers 2 isn't in great shape all around. The balancing issues, game glitches, and a dry spell of content were all topped off by the Sony debacle. This created a perfect storm of 4 issues all simultaneously occurring at the same time. And no matter what your opinion is on any of these issues, it is undeniable that the game is suffering and bleeding players because of these things. In fact, the game was even pushed out of the top 30 games concurrent player-wise on Steam. Honestly, 26,000 concurrent players is still pretty dang good for a video game, and keep in mind, this was during off hours when the United States was sleeping and most of Europe was at work or school. It also doesn't take PlayStation players into account, but a number this low is just really sad to see, considering off hours even just 2 weeks ago usually saw 50,000 players or more. Sadly, looking at it during peak hours, it doesn't get much better either. The game typically hits around 60,000 to 75,000 during most peak hours. The highest it hit in the last 7 days was on Saturday, May 18th with 94,000 players, which again, these are very commendable numbers. But compare them to even just the week before that when its peak was 121,000. And before you go off on me in the comment section, I'm not here to tell you that you can or cannot enjoy this game. I will tell you that I still love it, I am enjoying it at the moment, and I still play multiple games daily. But no matter which way you spin it, the game is clearly losing players and sentiment among the community is getting worse and worse. It's been on these trends for at least a month and a half now, and there's no stopping in sight. I made a much longer 28-minute video delving into all the details of this. Feel free to check that out if you'd like. You should be seeing it on screen right about now. But back to the main point of this video. Arrowhead CEO, or rather previous CEO, Pilestedt, announced yesterday that he is officially stepping down as CEO and will now be the Chief Creative Officer. We'll talk a little bit about who they hired to be the new CEO of Arrowhead in a bit, but for now let's talk about why this move from Pilestedt is a fantastic one and should give you hope for the future of this game. In the past few weeks leading up to this announcement, he discussed a lot about weapon balancing and essentially confirmed that this is one of his many priorities, and the others are working to address other game issues like the lack of content and glitches and bugs. Are you noticing a trend here? Well, not much of a trend, but the 3 issues that he's focusing on are things that we've been saying. He's clearly been listening to us, and if my word isn't enough, let's just go through some of his tweets in the last month leading up to now. There's a lot here, so I very well might miss something, but I definitely have most of the highlights here. And I swear to you, reading these alone will genuinely get you excited and hopeful for Helldivers' future. And just wait till you hear his tweets and interview quotes from yesterday. Those will get you more amped than anything. Anyway, at the start of May, he replied to a player who was expressing their concerns about the game. The player's main concern was basically that the balancing has made the game unfun, a very popular opinion among the community, and Pilestedt wrote back, and I quote, "I think we've gone too far in some areas. We'll talk to the team about the approach to balance. It feels like every time someone finds something fun, the fun is removed." There's no need to explain this super in depth. This is as straightforward as I can be. It is an acknowledgement of basically exactly what the community is saying. The fun is found by players, then it's removed, and he confirms that he's going to talk to the team about balancing. 2 boxes checked, that's perfect, but it gets even better. He elaborated further in another reply, saying that tweaking damage is a blunt tool and that he thinks they should be looking into things like recoil, reload speeds, accuracy, projectile speeds, and equip speeds. I'm obviously not a game dev or a professional by any standard, so my agreement means nothing, but I completely agree. The one easy example to look at is the Punisher Plasma. This weapon was a rare case of the game actually buffing a weak weapon, and they gave it an increase in projectile speed, and the weapon became infinitely more fun and better to use. And I know this is a controversial take, but I would even say that the Quasar nerf was a good way to nerf the weapon. I think it's in a fairly balanced state right now. It has the damage to kill large units with the benefit of not having to stop to reload like the Recoilless, or pick up a new one like the Eat, and in return suffers from a long cooldown time. I think those types of buffs and nerfs are the exact philosophy they should be going for with weapons. Each one should fill a different role and give the player a unique playstyle while still achieving what the weapon is made to do. I really do hope they go down this direction with future buffs and even future nerfs, because just like he says here, raw damage nerfs feel really bad and can instantly kill the feel of a weapon, while doing more subtle nerfs to things like magazine size, recoil, and reload speeds is a way to nerf weapons while still keeping their identity. At its most basic level, Helldivers 2 is a game about killing as many enemies as possible, and nerfs to damage is contradictory to the core game loop. On to the next tweet. Here, all the way back on May 8th, he confirms that he did most of the designs of all Arrowhead games, including Helldivers 2, and that his expertise is in design, code, level design, and VFX, and that running a business is what he's least proficient in. Funnily enough, with hindsight, this tweet tells us that he was clearly already thinking about or in the process of stepping down as CEO. But more importantly, despite the 120 devs that work here, a lot of what makes Helldivers is Johan, and now he's in a creative position on the team to influence the game directly. We'll cover this a bit more later, but take a look at this reply here. A player asks if Pelican 1 will ever be able to be upgraded, and he confirms that it was something they wanted to do, with full customization options including guns, rockets, loudspeakers, and more. He teases, let's see if it makes a return. I'm not saying we should be hoping for this, because odds are it won't happen anytime soon, if at all, but this just gives you a better idea of who is stepping into the role of Chief Creative Officer at Arrowhead. Then we get to the shortest, but perhaps most telling tweet of all. He responds to a player talking about the Eruptor losing its shrapnel mechanic, and all Pilestedt has to say is, agree, fantasy first. Like I mentioned previously, each weapon should feel unique and fill a different role than the others, and the Eruptor did this, but that was removed. Pilestedt understands this. If they move forward with the philosophy of fantasy first, I can tell you we'll be in good hands with our weapons. Then we get to the first bug/glitch related tweet, where a player tags him and says that every patch that releases breaks the game even more, and the frequency of patches must be the issue. But Pilestedt replies, saying that the time crunches may not be the only factor in patches being broken. He says that other checks and balances may not be working. To continue this, Twinbeard did confirm in this message that they want to start doing changes properly instead of rushing them so that they actually work. Clearly, Pilested's influence is felt here. He's not just spewing BS for good PR. The things he says, he actually wants to get them done, which is why he took a step down from CEO. But I promise we'll talk about this after this last tweet, because I think this one may excite a lot of people. I'm sure you've probably seen this one on Discord or Reddit or something, but here he replies to a player who talks about ARs. And his reply gives some really good insight into what he believes is wrong with ARs in Helldivers 2 and where they should be. I'm not quoting here, but he's basically saying that their representation has become diluted in games and that it's strange that rifles are seen as pea shooters, when in reality they are much stronger than that. This one seriously has me pumped up. There is nothing more satisfying in a game than a well-crafted assault rifle. Think of your AK-47s or M4s of the world. When those feel good in games, they feel good. And sadly, right now, most ARs in Helldivers 2 are very meh. The only decent one, in my opinion, is the Sickle, which isn't even classified as an AR, but let's be honest, it does perform like one. I digress. In the end, we need our ARs to be as powerful as they sound and look. They should be shredding enemies. I want to see a bug in front of me and tear through them with my AR, because that's how ARs should be. And it seems as if Mr. Pilestedt feels the same way. To cement all of this he's been talking about, and further confirm that he's not just spewing BS on Twitter, developer Evil Boss even confirms that a few days after these tweets went live, the CEO had begun a major internal push on balancing, resulting in a ton of meetings and chats about it. Pilestedt is legit and he wants to fix things. I trust him with this game that I love, a game that he loves probably even more than fans. But this brings us to yesterday, when the announcement of his move from CEO to CCO went live, and of course, he was on Twitter answering fan questions about this move. In his first tweet, he says that he is not nearly done and he cares more about weapon balance than quarterly business reviews. This alone should get you excited, considering weapon balancing wasn't even mentioned in the original tweet, but it was still top of his mind as he heads off to work on the game. He then reassures a fan that this is going to be great for the studio and the game. Then he clarifies some more, saying that he will be more active with the community, work closer with the team, and that the business side takes just too much time from making games. He says this a few times actually, that his goal with the move is to make games instead of working on boring stuff. But here is where it gets really interesting in my opinion. For anyone that is looking for hopium, this is where you'll find it. I have huffed a ton of this stuff. A fan asks, as CCO, what his direction is when receiving and reviewing player feedback. He replies, basically revealing his short-term plans and priorities as CCO, saying that the first thing they need to do is ensure that they get devs playing the game more, because it's hard to make the right decisions if their eyes aren't on the road. He then says that they want to actively look at feedback and find out why that feedback is given. In reference to weapon balancing, he says that his working theory is that time to kill is too high. In this same thread, he replies to some more players. First, a fan says that they need to create more content to retain the player base. He outright agrees, saying, yeah, longer lasting content as well. And second, a player says that difficulty and challenge are a part of what makes this game good. Level 9 is already too easy, to which he replies, it doesn't have to be easier. It's just that some weapons occasionally feel like pea shooters. Now, there was a lot of things that he just said there, but luckily a lot of it is at face value, much like everything he says. You don't need me to sit here and explain them to you. He ticks all of the major boxes that everyone in the community has been talking about. He's obviously been listening and he knows what needs to be done. That is where his head is at, balancing and content. Speaking of balancing and content, he continues to reply to players about the subject. Someone says that they should make armor have more interesting stats, that the guns in Polar Patriots were bad, and that bugs and bots should be able to attack other planets instead of moving in straight lines. His reply is short but telling, simply saying, agree on all points. Lastly, he says that they plan to double down on what makes Helldivers 2 great. Then he confirms that weapon balancing will get the attention that it deserves with him in a more involved role. Which is really what leads me to my main point of this video. Pilestedt stepping down as CEO is probably the best thing that could happen for the future of this game. There is nothing more commendable than literally taking a demotion for the betterment of the game. Although I doubt his salary changed, not that that matters, but you see what I'm saying here. This is a guy that was the CEO of a company that made the biggest hit game of 2024. He saw it was in a struggling state and he said, yeah, I'll fix that. Remember that tweet where he said that he did most of the designs for all of Arrowhead's games, including Helldivers? Yeah, Pilestedt is basically the creative grandfather for this game and the universe. If there's anyone who can and wants to set this game on the right path, it's this guy. Yes, we haven't seen what exactly the next patch will have in store, but it could very well lay the foundation for what his time as CCO will look like. Nobody can say 100% that it will be or won't be good, but I think based on what we've seen from Pilestedt that we aren't wrong to have high hopes for this next patch. After all, this patch is likely incredibly important considering that so many players are just waiting to see if this can set the game in the right direction. And Pilestedt knows it, so I think obviously all of Arrowhead knows it. I'll say it again, genuinely, I think this is the best possible news we could have gotten for this game. Pilestedt will be in the game dev trenches closer to both the community and the Arrowhead team just like he wants to be. He also did a really great interview with gamesindustry.biz, I'll link that article down below, but he says, and I quote, "After some contemplation and deep anxiety on how things are going to pan out, I finally came to the proper conclusion that I will have to follow my heart. It's not only right for me, but right for the organization. Having a reluctant CEO is not something that will turn out well, I think." Again, this is an extremely selfless move, but it's a smart one. He clearly knows that he would have far more impact and ability to mold Helldivers 2 into the vision that he wants as the CCO rather than the CEO. Speaking of the CEO, who did he hire to replace him? Well, meet Georgiani Shams, who has a ton of years of experience in the games industry. He was heavily involved in the Swedish Games Awards, was the chief business officer at Paradox Interactive, and then founded his own gaming-related consulting business. And now he's on Super Earth at Arrowhead Game Studios. I don't know much about this guy besides what you can currently read on the many articles covering this news, but he clearly has the experience to back up his position and was personally chosen by Pilestedt. So if he gets the seal of approval from him, he's got my thumbs up as well. Keep in mind, Pilestedt did say that he is still the chairman of Arrowhead, so when it comes down to it, he will have final say. So it's not like Georgiani can come in and influence it with a ton of microtransactions and completely ruin the company. Not that I think he will, I'm just pointing out that it probably can't happen. Georgiani was also interviewed by gamesindustry.biz and says, "What I'll be bringing to the table is organization and leadership. It's a lot of the, frankly, boring business administration stuff that is a necessary part of running a company. Bethesda has Todd Howard, Kojima Productions has Kojima, Remedy has Sam Lake, so that's the setup. How do we enable Johan to make more Helldivers, and what I bring is a structure around that." He later says, "We really want to turn Arrowhead into a flagship studio. When we were growing up, we really wanted to work at Blizzard. It was one of the bucket list places to work at. I think Arrowhead has the potential to be that." Oh, by the way, Pilestedt later confirms that they were talking about Blizzard before 2004 specifically. So if anything, Georgiani has big plans and big expectations. Even if some of those plans, like becoming the next Blizzard, didn't happen immediately, we can expect that Pilestedt will be empowered to do exactly what they want him to do. Create more Helldivers. And that can only bode well for the game, both in the short term and long term. In the end, I am truly hopeful that this game has brighter days ahead. It is undeniably at the lowest point it's ever been at. It's obviously not at rock bottom or anything. Again, I still really love the game, but it just has the potential to be so much better, and I really do think this game will hit that potential. And it all starts with getting on track right now. New content, balancing changes, and bug fixes. Those are the big three priorities in my opinion, and gathering from what Pilestedt has said, those are exactly his goals as well. I'm not only hopeful, but I am expectant that the next patch is a positive one and puts us in the right direction. I won't sit here and lay out exactly what I'm hoping will be in the patch because really, I don't expect anything specific. I don't care which direction they go. I just expect that after all this talk from Arrowhead employees and the move from CEO to CCO, that it won't just all be for naught, that something positive will come from this patch. Even if it's just baby steps like fixing a bug or two or buffing one weapon or adding a piece of content. I'm cool with that, as long as we head in the right direction, and I'm confident they'll do that. For now though, it's just all talk. We'll really need to see what happens when they attempt to implement this stuff. For all we know, the next patch could be filled with nerfs and just completely break the game. I'm very hopeful that won't happen, almost positive, but hey, who knows? Time is the only thing that will tell, and we'll just have to keep patiently waiting until we get the next patch or update. And wait patiently we will, because in the words of Twinbeard himself, they are cooking. Thanks so much for watching, I very much appreciate it. Drop a sub on your way out if you enjoyed, and let me know what you think about all this down in the comments. I really do love this game, I love the community, and love discussing it with other passionate divers, so let's keep it civil and let's chat. Until next time, I'll see you in the next one. Peace!